Hi, I'm Julia Rebholz.
And I'm Robin Charbit, and we're both from Insight Principles. The title of this video is Dealing with Uncertainty. Now, before you watch this video, there's a few others that we've put up there that you might find useful as a precursor or to give you some more basic knowledge. There's a summary of Insight Principles. There's a couple of videos on the principles and the mechanics on how the human mind works. There's also something called Design for Success, which we're going to refer to a bit in this video. And then there's also the topic of Inside Out. So you might want to watch those first. Though it's fine to watch this, then go back, and just wanted to give you the whole context. Now, the reason we're doing this is that we're currently living in unprecedented times. So we're sure that many of you are having difficult moments. Probably the people around you also are having difficult moments. And what we know is that if you can understand more about the human mind, it will help you be okay with whatever's happening. So that's why we wanted to talk about dealing with uncertainty, because there's a lot of it about. Now, on this video, we want to make 3 points, and I'll summarize them again at the end of the video. So the first point is, whether you realize it or not, we're always living in the unknown. So we're going to unpack that a bit and explain that, because most people think there is certainty in life. Now, the second point is, unless you realize the inside-out nature of life, you can easily live in the illusion that your security is coming from knowing the future. So when the future is unknown, you'll feel insecure. Well, we're going to show you that that's not the case. The third point is that the more we realize that the human mind has a built-in design for success, the more you can actually trust the wisdom behind life and be okay with not knowing and having uncertainty. So that's what we want to cover in this video, okay?
So, as Robin mentioned, one of the capacities that we have from within our minds is the ability to imagine the future. And whatever we imagine in our minds always looks real. But we've had the experience of imagining something that's going to happen. And then later on, things change when we get there. Life is this never-ending, unfolding series of unexpected events. And we can see that happening right now with the coronavirus. We're getting new information about the nature of the virus on a day-to-day basis. One moment we believe that having immunity from the virus came from getting it. And then the next minute we're told, perhaps actually if you've had the virus, maybe you don't have immunity and you can get it again. This is the unfolding nature of circumstances. And the more that we see that we are constantly living in this unfolding set of circumstances that show up that we have absolutely no control over, the more we realize that we're always living in the unknown, no matter how much we believe in the future scenarios that we create with our minds.
Yeah, if you just reflect on things that have happened to you in the past that you did not plan or expect. So taking the opposite twist on Julia, life shows up and surprises you as opposed to you trying to predict the future. You'll notice that mostly you've done okay with it. There's a built-in design for success in the human mind that brought you the thinking you needed in the moment, and you were able to deal with whatever happened. Some of you heard me mention how my mother was in a serious accident a few years ago. Well, she's made a full recovery, so I'm just going to share some details to make the point here. So she was in a coma. They didn't know she would survive. Then they realized they could do some operations, and she came out of her first operation, and she looked like she'd survived the operation, because that was a big concern. And at the time, she was still unconscious, and we didn't know how well she would recover from the surgeries, how well they would have worked. I mean, she'd survived, which was the main thing. And what was interesting is I had all these friends and family members who I was keeping up to date. And they would all come along with, well, what are you going to do when she gets out of hospital? And can she move back into a home? And shouldn't you be looking for someone to help her out at home? Or maybe assisted living is better. And how are you going to convert the house? And I was like, well, that's the future. And I don't know whether any of that's going to happen. I mean, I don't know if my mother's going to be able to walk at all. She's had the surgery, she survived the surgery, but I don't know what's going to happen next. So it was interesting how I just focused on what was happening now, and I didn't spend too much time entertaining what might happen in the future. Now, she woke up from the surgery, and she was still intubated, so we didn't know if she could breathe on her own, because she'd been in a coma for 10 days. And when particularly at that age, you've been intubated, they don't know if you're going to be able to breathe on your own. And again, people were talking to me about the future and, you know, how's she going to get out of the hospital? I was like, let's just see if the woman can breathe on her own. So it was interesting how I just kept trusting that the future would be taken care of, and I didn't have to worry about it, and I could just be present and focus on what was needed in the moment. I could have gone into all sorts of hypotheses and scenarios, which in the end, most of the hypotheses my friends and families were suggesting turned out not to be right. My mother's made a complete recovery. She's living in her own home. She has no assisted living, no support. She hasn't had her house modified, and she's driving again. Now, none of that was imaginable at the time. And I could have gone in all sorts of directions and confused myself. But I just kept remembering that I'm okay, she's okay, there's wisdom behind life, and things are going to turn out the way they turn out.
Now, if we don't see what Robin was just referring to, and we don't see that the thinking that we need will show up in the moments that we need it, and that then we start to live in this illusion that we can change the circumstances, that we can make them turn out how we want them to turn out. And that creates an illusion that the certainty or the circumstances being how we want them is what makes us safe. But that's not true, and it never has been true. As Robin was referring to in his story, the future is always an incomplete equation. We can imagine things, we can plan things, but we don't know exactly what's going to happen until we get to that moment. And when we're in that moment, our design for success will bring us the thinking that we need to be with that moment.
So just to summarize the 3 points that we've tried to make in this video. The first is, whether we realize it or not, we're always living in the unknown. As Julia said in her last comment, the future is always an incomplete equation. The second point so just to summarize the 3 points we've made in this video. First of all, whether we realize it or not, we're always living in the unknown. As Julia just said, the future is always an incomplete equation. It always has been and always will be. The second point we wanted you to realize is that unless you're present to and you're seeing the inside-out nature of life, it's really easy to live in an illusion that the security comes from knowing the future. It's not true. It just looks that way. And then the last point is, the more we realize that we have a built-in design for success in our mind, the more we can trust that the wisdom behind life is going to show up and help us out. And that will allow us to be okay with not knowing and with uncertainty. So thanks so much for watching. Hope this was helpful. And don't hesitate to contact us if there's anything we can do to be helpful. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.